Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Devin Hassan and Kendrick Johnson. Gentlemen, we are still kind of in catch-up mode from the holidays, so whereas for last Thursday's podcast, we devoted it to kind of playing some catch-up with girls basketball, we're going to shift gears, talk some stuff on the boys' side of the hardwood this Monday. So, we've got about, I guess, the season's about 2 months old, we should say. You know, everybody's wrapped up their tournaments, and we're now fully immersed into the grind of district plays. So we're each, the three of us plus, Justin, Taylor, and Brian. We're all just going to drop one storyline, something that stood out from the first 2 months of boys basketball, just to play some catch up as we really as basketball season hits its stride. So let's go, Kendrick. We're just kind of talk a bit about one of the notable storylines out McKinney ways and just what has kind of caught your eye early on in MISD boys basketball.
Byron Schoby is the real deal. I became a fan of his last year, but there wasn't a consistency. He must have heard me talking because there's consistency. He's averaging 30.2 points a game.
Wow.
And the thing is, it's not just him and a bunch of guys. They got a bunch of glue guys and athletes like Aaron Pitts and Aaron Brown and Andrew Pitts, who were stars in the football. They got that winning mentality. They brought it over to the basketball, and it's all merging. And Coach Watson on the X and O's making it happen. They're 3-0. In district.
Because that was a team that heading in, they were able to, snag a playoff berth on the final night of the regular season last year, but they lost quite a few impactful seniors. Michael Hartford, Dominic St. Leon, and it was a team that weren't really sure what to make of. You knew what Schoby could do offensively, but
he took it to another level, though. He went from being about a 20-point guy to a 30-point. That's a big leap. So
how does he go about generating his offense in the times that you've seen him? Is he just a fire cooker from the outside, or just how does he go about?
I won't say it's strong. It's a baby Steph Curry where he comes from an array of shots. He gets hot, and then he gets everybody else going, and he come hit you with 230 bombs. It's like, what do you do about that? And then another thing, too, is people try to beat him up away from the ball, and McKinney's athletic enough and plays up and down that you got problems. So either you're going to get in a track meet with them, or you're going to have to live and die with Schoby shooting 30-foot threes and making 40% of them.
That's no small feat either. So if you look at the standings right now in District 9 6A, you have McKinney tied with Jesuit atop at 3-0.
They play tomorrow.
And Prosper and Allen are tied for third at 2-1. Plano Senior, Plano West in fifth at 1-2. Plano East and McKinney Boyd rounding it out at 0-3. And you're talking about one of the more dynamic scorers in the district, and I can offer up one of my own as I shift gears to talk about Allen's Isaiah Stevens, who heading into this season, he was one of the more interesting players to monitor in this district, just because he was the only returning starter from Allen's state championship team last year. And Allen is a team that has been last year's team was a group that really had a lot of continuity and chemistry working in their favor. They were so balanced. So with Stevens this year, he's entering his third year on varsity. How much more would be asked of him, after having to be not a role player, because like I said, it was just so tough to stand out on these Allen teams these last couple of years. They didn't even have a guy, though. They were so balanced that they had 4 or 5 players that could all go off for 15-20 points a night. Whereas this year's team, it's essentially Stevens having to shepherd a rotation that is mostly comprised of first-year varsity players. And so far, he's been up to the challenge and then some. I was going back through his prior to Saturday's game against McKinney Boyd, his last 5 games, he's averaging 28.8 points. And you look at that, some of the opponents that he's gone against, he had 42 points against Jesuit last Tuesday. He had 39 in their tournament semifinal against Cibolo Steel. 25 in the championship game against Lake Travis. All three of those teams are ranked in the state's top 25. So these are, some of the best teams in the state that he's showing out against. I mean,
Oh
yeah, and because he's having, this is, like I talk about Allen and just how balanced they are. This is, one of the better individual offensive seasons that an Allen player's had in recent memory. And it was after that game against Lake Travis that, talking to head coach Joe McCullough, when, he wasn't holding back in his praise of Isaiah Stevens, going so far as to call him the most underrated player in the Metroplex.
Schoby's pretty underrated too.
Yeah.
Because how tall is he? Schoby's only 5'8".
Yeah. No, Stevens is taller than that, but it's not here to compare one versus the other. But in the sense that Isaiah Stevens is, he was named tournament MVP for all three of Allen's tournaments this season. And these aren't just small tournaments either. This is the Pasadena Invitational. This is the Garland ISD Coppell Invitational, the Allen In and Out. Where he has been the best player in all three of these tournaments that he's played in. And just to see that he's, and who knows, how much of this is just him being given more responsibility, because like I said, it was just so tough to stand out. They had so much, those teams last year were just so balanced, and you had 4 or 5 players that could all do some of the same things, but now you're having to see Stevens really kind of carry the load. And yeah, like I said, he's been up to it and then some. He was putting on a show against Jesuit and on Tuesday, and just oohing and ahhing the crowd. I said since the get-go that I think he's the best shooter in the Metroplex, and you've been able to see stuff like this ever since his sophomore year, just how good an outside shooter he is. But you're seeing his ability to finish, the kinds of different shots that he can create for himself, not just off the dribble, catch and shoot or whatever, but when he gets to the lane, he'll stop on a dime and hit a little pull-up on you. He's a very, very crafty scorer. He's a crafty playmaker too.
He sets up his teammates.
Oh yeah, he sets up his teammates very well. And that's the passing is the thing that I think is, with him, being asked to do a bit more this season. That's the part of his game that I think has flourished a bit more now that he's being, having to, kind of run the show a bit more at the point.
Do you think the second half is going to be interesting? Do you think when people come game plans to stop a Schoby or stop him, do you think it's going to be different how do you think it's going to affect their teams? It seems like Allen's got, just by numbers, they got more others.
And it did, because that was the case against Jesuit. Because at some point, when you kind of realize okay, Stevens is just in one of those roles. They tried selling out to stop him, but his shooting is just I'm guessing Schoby has a fairly quick release too. That's the thing. Stevens can get his shot off from anywhere. There isn't a shot in that gym that it feels like is a bad shot for him. But you see, a lot of Allen's role players, they are a bit different from last year in that it's not the they had a lot of guys that could space the floor in addition to Stevens last season. The guys this year are a bit more attack-minded, getting to the basket. And Jesuit did a really good job shutting that down. And when you took away that plan A, Allen's role players didn't really have much of a counter. So, but that's just stuff that you figure out because again, a lot of those kids have only been playing together on varsity for 20 games, 25 games. So you just expect that with experience, they'll figure out more of a counter to that. So
I think Allen and McKinney benefited from being that tough district last year, because those younger guys saw, and I would say this is not as difficult, but it's now it's their time to shine. You're not seeing a Denton Geyer where
hey, Jesuit's not bad. I say that having seen them last Tuesday, Jesuit is every bit as good as that record and ranking would tell you. Devin, let's shift gears and get you a chance to chime in on whether it's Garland ISD, Mesquite ISD. What has been one noteworthy storyline?
Well, I don't have any 25 or 30 point scorers out of my neck of the woods, but so I'm going to take more of a team angle. There's been a couple of intriguing storylines to start. Sachse, who won one district game last year, all of last year, is off to a 2-1 start. Mesquite, who had their streak of 15 straight playoff appearances snapped. Looks like they're kind of rounding back into the usual Mesquite form that we know. But I guess the team that's really jumped out at me so far is Poteet. A team that's always kind of been there, competing for third or fourth. They go back and forth. They make the playoffs one year, they miss one year. It's one of those programs, but they're off to a really strong start. They're 3-0 and 13-5A, all 3 double-digit wins. They played. I got a chance to see them Friday night against West Mesquite. They play solid defense. They're well-rounded. But I'm just really curious to see how they are going to play out the rest of the district run. They have an outstanding point guard in Tyler Jones, knocked down the 3, does a good job running the offense. He scores 10.5 points a game, dishes out 4 assists per contest. They have size in the middle. DJ Basie, their 6'9" senior, athletic player, double guy with points and rebounds, also blocks about 4 shots a game. A lot of contributing parts with Peyton Miller, Lewis Moore, Jalen Alexander, Javonte Valdez. And then they have some younger guys that have kind of come along recently, Jalen Police, King Moore. But then to me, the X factor is Devin Martin. Devin Martin is a 6'5", 250-pound sophomore who was the Offensive Newcomer of the Year at wide receiver for the football team. Just good athlete. I mean, big size, but he's come on. He's joined the basketball team after Poteet's run, so he's only played in a handful of games. But I mean, he's impressive. Again, he's 6'5", 250, so he's got that build to bang down low. He's got pretty good moves on the interior. And what really impressed me the other night, he'll go down, he'll grab a rebound, and all of a sudden he'll run the break. I mean, he's got good ball handling skills, and just, I mean, really one of those difference makers that's only going to get better as he goes on. In his short time, he's averaging 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. And again, he's still breaking into the rotation, still getting to learn the guys around him. So, Poteet's an intriguing team. We'll see as far as measuring sticks go. They get number 1 Lancaster Tuesday night on the road. So that's, I'm not going to say they're going to beat Lancaster because not many people beat Lancaster at all. But it'll be a good measuring stick for them to see just how measure up against arguably the best team in the state.
One team that you had mentioned prior that I will vouch for is Sachse, and I got to see them play against Plano at a tournament earlier in the year, and a team that has definitely made some strides under their first year head coach Zach Meixel.
Yeah, they really have, and we talked about that this for for a long time on the podcast. Just Sachse is good at everything. The talent is out there. They just had to put it together. Sometimes it just takes a coaching change, just a fresh look, whatnot. And they, like I say, Zach Meixel, he's had a lot of success as an assistant over at Lakeview. He's been a perennial playoff team for years, and he just brought that positive mindset and got those guys believing, and so far so good. And we'll see how they fare, because they have a game against South Carolina coming up tomorrow and Tuesday night as well. So
another measuring stick.
Speaking of
how you think that district is going to match up with the Plano district, Plano, Allen, McKinney?
It's that's so far off in the future. I mean, we've talked about 9-6A and how it's a battle every night, and those teams are going to be battle tested. I don't think we've seen quite enough out of 10-6A. They're not going to have the top to bottom quality, but Wiley's been ranked in the state rankings for most of the year.
They're an athletic team too. I saw them a little bit too.
South Garland is obviously with Tyrese Maxey and Chris Harris and that group coming off their state tournament appearance a year ago. Rylett's been a little bit down. I think they had basically replaced their entire starting lineup. But like we mentioned, Sachse's improved. Lakeview's got a solid team. So I don't think they're top to bottom. They're not as deep as 9-6A. It's a lot of it's probably going to come down to matchups when it comes down to it. I think South Carolina obviously matches up with certain teams that had 9-6A better when we're talking about that. But again, we're 3 games into the slate, so it's a lot to still play out in terms of 10-6A.
Yes, a lot to play out, not just in our markets, but also in the Frisco area, Denton County, and whatnot. And we will let Taylor Ragland, Justin Thomas, Brian Murphy take the reins in a bit. But first, got to shine that student athlete spotlight. And for this, we go out to Frisco Lone Star. Lone Star, they're already. I think they're already about to hit the midway point in their boys district. And Frisco Lone Star is atop the district standings, and thanks in no small part to the play of Julian Larry, quarterback for the football team, now tearing it up on the basketball court. And Brian Murphy had a chance to talk with Julian, and we will see what he had to say after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, I'm here with Julian Larry, star quarterback at Lone Star, but also star point guard, dual sport athlete here for the 7-0 undefeated Lone Star Rangers. Julian, first to be undefeated, y'all had to tackle a monster, last year's district champion in Liberty, a team that beat y'all pretty badly at Liberty the last time y'all played a year ago, and y'all returned the favor by winning 68-54. What was getting revenge, I guess you could say, like in beating Liberty last week?
I mean, it felt really good. We just went throughout the game plan that Coach Connor put in for us, and we just went out and executed really well.
Now, talk a little bit about that rivalry. I know it's kind of hard to get rivalries here in Frisco. There's so many teams, so many schools popping up each year and stuff. But I know y'all know each other across these schools. But Lone Star and Liberty, they've been so good in basketball. Talk about that rivalry.
I mean, Lone Star and Liberty has been a rivalry for a while, even since my freshman year coming up, being a freshman on varsity. Everybody's installed like the top two teams are Lone Star and Liberty, and it's whoever comes out on top. So it's really been a rivalry here for a while. It's just been back and forth every year between the two schools.
Now, like I mentioned just a minute ago, y'all are 7-0 in district play so far. What has been the recipe to the success?
Just sticking together, staying together as a team, and playing very good defense.
Now, one of your buddies on the backcourt, Marvin Mims, you just got done throwing touchdown passes to him on the football field, and now y'all are passing it to each other and whatnot on the basketball court. What's that like, going from the football field to the basketball court with one of your buddies?
I mean, he makes it a whole lot easier on me. We've been playing together since we were young, I'm talking about real young, 5 years old. So he makes it a whole lot easier on me to do my job on both football and basketball court.
Now, which one's more fun, assisting him on the basketball court, throwing him an alley-oop, because I know he can jump, or he can hit a three. What's more fun, throwing a touchdown pass or throwing him an alley-oop?
I mean, that's a real hard one. I wouldn't put either one of them over each other, because I think both of them is equal, throwing them to him.
Now, so you're excelling at both sports on the varsity level. Which sport did you start playing first, and what's kind of your first love, basketball or football?
Basketball is my first love, because I really picked up a basketball because I was really just watching it a lot on TV, and I started liking it. So I pick up a basketball at a very young age, and just started dribbling around the house and just started developing the skills, and then I just kept developing more and more and just exploded throughout my high school years.
So you watched basketball growing up as a kid, as a young child. So which players did you watch and try and kind of emulate as you started to develop your game? Which NBA players, I should say?
Really, from a whole around basketball standpoint, I looked at LeBron, but growing up for my position and stuff, I really looked at Steve Nash a lot.
Now, why is that?
Because the basketball IQ he has is very high, and I like the way he carries himself around the court, and how his basketball IQ is just top notch, how he makes a bunch of these passes and leads his teams to a bunch of wins.
Now, one last question about this district. Now, a 10-team district, so many teams in the district, and a lot of teams have improved. Frisco's gotten better, Wakeland seems to have gotten better, Reedy's winning games that they weren't winning last year. What's it got to take to keep the ball rolling, keep it moving, and to win a district title this year in this really tough district?
Stay healthy and stay together, because if we stay together, then I think nobody can beat us. Nobody in the state at all can beat us if we stay together.
All right, a big thanks to Julian Larry over at Lone Star and the Rangers' hot start. We did a line change here for the second half of this podcast. I'm Brian Murphy. That's Justin Thomas. It's Taylor Ragland. Sticking with Lone Star, speaking of the Rangers, they're 7-0 in district play in that Frisco district. That's already midway through the district slate there. They started back in, early December, late November. Pretty crazy how, 10-team district, you have to start district so early. But, Lone Star, they're killing it. Coming off a big win over Liberty on Friday night. I was there. They won 68-54. And it was a big win for them, because the previous time those two teams met in that same building at Liberty last January, Liberty won by 30. And so, I talked to both coaches after the game. Coach Connor from Lone Star, he brought it up. He said, hey, they beat us before they even got off the bus. And then, Coach Fryer at Liberty said, hey, I knew that game was on their minds, and it showed. So Lone Star, they're looking good. They have their football guys in Julian Larry, Marvin Mims. They didn't have them at the beginning of the year in tournament play and whatnot, since Lone Star was making its deep playoff run. But they're in there. Then you have guys like Isaiah Lewis and Malik Williams, and this is going to be a tough team to beat in that Frisco district. So we'll see if Lone Star can keep it up. Any other undefeated squads happening so far in y'all's districts? I know y'all only 2 games.
Yeah, we're 3 games in, and one team not undefeated, not even with a winning record, and kind of surprising. The team I'm going to talk about is Plano West, because they're one of those teams that, a down year last year. I talked a lot about in the preseason how we all kind of expected those of us that cover 9-6A for them to rebound and to have a good season, get back in the playoffs. They bring back Ryan Zambi, Alex Zambi, who was the newcomer of the year last year, and it just hasn't really materialized early in district play. It's an interesting kind of conundrum for them. When they give up 73, 74, 75 and above points, they typically lose, and that's something that they don't do often. But it's been happening in district play. They gave up 80 to McKinney and an 80 to 74 loss, 78 to Prosper and a 78.
Now, how shocking was that McKinney loss?
I mean, for me, it shows kind of the parity I think that all 9-6A sports have, which is interesting. Pretty much every bracket sport we've covered and everyone will cover, if I'm learning anything about this district, is that it's going to be just like 6-6A, and that on any given night, these teams are just so talented. But I mean, it is shocking because they go out in their first game of district before the holiday break and beat Boyd 75-62. I was at that game, covered it. Didn't really break much of a sweat, handled Boyd, and Boyd is one of those teams that we kind of predict to finish near the bottom, not because they're necessarily awful. I mean, in a lot of districts, they'd be contending for a playoff spot, but, it's just a matter of being in 9-6A. But, they handle business and they go into their holiday tournament. I believe they get third on the back of let's see, I think it was a 66-63 win over Austin LBJ. And those are the kind of games that they typically win. They really, play well in games where they hold, they've held people in the 40s and 50s and especially in the, the low 60s. And that game, they also got scoring from, Ryan Zambia had 20, Christian Aguilar had 20, Dalen Miner had 12. So when they spread the ball out, and they have multiple 3 or 4 guys in double digits, that's kind of the formula that they've needed to get their wins, and it's been the opposite of it seems like what they've gotten versus McKinney and versus Prosper. Against McKinney, I think Zambia had 26, Dalen Miner had 18, and then against Prosper it was kind of the same story. It was those two guys. Dalen Miner had 22, Zambia had 15. Because they list their stats, their notable stats on Twitter after every game, and it's literally just been kind of those two guys. So it worries, I guess, Plano West supporters that maybe they're falling into some of the same things that they did last season and getting really reliant on 1 or 2 guys. And when you do that and you don't play defense, you let teams get up in the upper 70s and 80s, which is it's a pretty high scoring game for a high school game, especially. It's translated to some losses into a 1-2 record early in district. I think they have plenty of time to rebound, but McKinney and Prosper are some of those bubble teams that we kind of predicted for 9-6A. So those are going to be really important games the second time around, because you start losing twice in district play to teams like McKinney or Prosper, then your chances of making the playoffs really diminish, because those aren't those Allens and Jesuits. Those are the ones that are trying to fight for those 3rd and 4th spots, which is where we kind of figured Plano West would be. So losing to McKinney and Prosper in the first round has already kind of set them back a little bit. So more of an uphill road, I think, for the Wolves than maybe we thought it would be.
Yeah, when I saw that final score last week, I was kind of shocked, because coming in, Prosper, a bit of a rebuilding mode for the boys' side, at least this year.
Well, and jumping up. I mean, like with all their sports, you just don't know how you're going to transition.
Yeah. But it helps when you have a transfer in Mondo Battle. I got to see him play.
What a name, by the way.
Mondo, name of the year. I saw him play against McKinney Boyd last week, and they demolished Boyd. No surprise there. We talked about Boyd's struggles already on this podcast. But that was my first time seeing Battle play, and he's just this big post player, and he was just dominating. Led the team in scoring. I think he had 19 that game, and then against Plano West he has 17. And then Coach Ellis tells me after the game, he was a transfer in December, and they waited to pass all the UIL rules and regulations and all that stuff. So they did it the right way. He's not breaking any rules or anything, but he came at the right time with district play, a big man that they needed, because they had a lot of empty spots. The only returning starter they had was Josh Davis, and he's filling in that void, and we'll see if Prosper can keep it up.
It's a good big man name too.
That's a great name. It's just a good name in general.
Just makes you sound tough, even if you are. Yeah, no, JT, I understand the Colony boys. I know the girls are good, but the boys are climbing in the state rankings, number 7.
Yeah, up to I think it's 8, maybe 7 or 8. I don't know. They kind of change pretty quickly, and of course the internet's not working over here very well. I believe last I checked they were number 8, but real good start for the Colony. They just had a game Friday against Justin Northwest and gave them all they could handle. They were up 6 after 3 quarters. I didn't watch this game, but just looking at the score, they were up 6 after 3 quarters. Ended up losing by 3, but on the road against the number 1 team in the state, very good showing. They also had a nice good showing in the tournament they hosted, and then they beat a good 6A team, Lewisville, on Monday. So the Colony is rolling along. I kind of wanted to focus a little more on 6A though, because in that district it kind of looks like the Colony is going to be a playoff team. 6A, however, is more kind of up in the air right now. And you mentioned kind of teams that are still undefeated in district. I do have one, and it's kind of a surprise. It's Coppell, and they're 3-0. I wasn't really that ties them for first with MacArthur. And I wasn't really sure what to expect from the Cowboys coming in. They have a new coach, Clint Schnell, after Coppell moved to an assistant AD position in the school district. So they have a new coach, and then two guys that we figured were going to be key players for them. KJ Liggins, the standout football player, suffers an injury in football season really early, so he's out for the whole basketball season. And then Quavian Adger, an all-district player last year as a sophomore, a really good player. He transfers before the school starts to I School in Lewisville. So two guys that I figured were going to be two of their key pieces were both gone, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. Obviously, they have Tariq Amon back there, 3 or 4 year starter at point guard, and he's been awesome this year. And they lost to Lewisville in a non-district game, but then they came back, beat them in district, so they're 3-0 with MacArthur, so kind of surprised by that. Still like the looks of this Lewisville squad. They're 2-1. They made the finals of that Colony tournament I mentioned and lost to a good Wiley team.
I remember a few weeks ago you were hyping up Lewisville basketball quite a bit.
Yeah, so they're looking pretty good. They hung right in there with the Colony on Monday. They made the finals of that tournament and lost to Wiley. Got a nice win over Mesquite to open that tournament. They have a big one Tuesday against Hebron. Hebron's 2-1. They're looking good. I saw them earlier, with the big win over Little Elm. Still not exactly sure what's going to happen with Trajan Bridges, but they should have him at least for another week before he departs for Norman, possibly.
So he's graduating early, correct? Or so he says.
I don't know. They're really flip-floppy over there. I can't really get a good read on what's going on there. On signing day, it seemed like he was going to be graduating early, but I think they would still have him for this week's of games before he goes out there. So yeah, it's weird.
Oh man, if I was him, I would just stay.
I know.
You have 4 years to do your thing. I'd just stick it out, play little high school basketball.
But they've played well without him when they were still playing the football playoffs. So big game there, and then kind of surprised. Flower Mound has one of the district's top players, Caleb Lohner. He was the MVP last year. He's a top 40 recruit in the nation as a junior. Getting big looks from everywhere. Surprisingly, they're 0-3, and they had a kind of a surprising loss to a Marcus team that I kind of figured would finish outside of the playoffs. Yet another team with the first-year head coach. But yeah, they got the big win over Flower Mound, so the Jaguars need to crank things up right now, sitting at 0-3. And they have, obviously, unbeaten Coppell on Tuesday, so they need to pick it up.
Must-win game?
You don't want to start 0-4 in this district. That's going to be a tough hill to climb.
Yeah, they need some of that magic that the volleyball team had back in the fall to keep it going.
But, outside of Lohner, they don't have much varsity experience back other than Jeffrey Mills, so maybe it's taking a little slower than they anticipated to come along. But, yeah, they need to crank things up quickly if they want to get back in the playoff picture after having one of their better years in program history last season.
It wouldn't be a boys basketball podcast if I didn't mention RJ Hampton. So it just wouldn't be right. Last Friday he dropped 42 and a 30-point blowout over Denton. We'll see what he's got this Friday against Justin Northwest.
Scored 50 the other week.
He did. I think he's averaging close to 40 points a game right now. It's nuts. Not much to say other than he's awesome. Probably the best player in the state. He was the 5A player of the year last year. Most likely will win that again this year, and we'll see what he has against probably the best team in 5A. No doubt about it, the best team in that district, 8-5A district with Justin Northwest Friday. Should be a fun one. I'll be there if you want to follow along to my updates. My Twitter is @BrianMurphy_. But yeah, we'll see. Should be a big test for the Lobos, who beat South Garland just a few weeks ago, one of the top teams in the state in 6A. Do y'all have anything else to add?
That'll do it.
I think we touched everything. So for Taylor Ragland, Justin Thomas, I'm Brian Murphy. That wraps up this edition of the High School Star Local Media Sports Podcast. Make sure to stay tuned for Wednesday when we talk a little more basketball.